In today's video, we are going to be talking about decimal fractions, specifically adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing decimal fractions. But first, let's quickly go through some basics. Here we have a decimal, and as we can see, we have two decimal places. And we refer to this over there as the decimal point. Next, for fractions, the top number is called the numerator and the bottom number is called the denominator. A way to remember this is that the D for denominator stands for down. That is how we know that the denominator is at the bottom. Now let's get into some questions. For question number 1, we are asked to convert this fraction into a decimal. So we've got the fraction 3/5, and to convert a fraction into a decimal, we need the denominator to either be 10, 100, or 1,000. Now, it's quite clear to us that if we were to choose one of these values of 10, 100, or 1,000 to be our denominator, it would be easiest to turn that 5 into a 10. To do this, we need to multiply this denominator by something to get it to be 10. And as you should know, if we multiply this denominator by 2, we will get 10 because 5 times 2 is 10. So if we multiply our denominator by 10, or rather by 2, we will get that 5 times 2 is 10. Now we need to do the same thing to the numerator. So since we multiplied by 2 at the bottom, we need to do the exact same for the top. So therefore, for our answer's numerator, we will say 3 times 2, and that will give us 6. So now we have a fraction where our denominator is either 10, 100, or 1,000, and in this case it was 10. Now, if we look at the number 10, we can see that it has got 1 0. Therefore, we know that our final answer is going to have one decimal place. Remember, this point over there is our decimal point. So we know that it is going to have one decimal place. So to find the numbers which go in our decimal places, we simply look at the numerator of our fraction. So remember, if we have one decimal place, we're going to take this number and put it over there in our decimal place, which is currently empty. So we put a 6 in there, we've used up all of our decimal spaces, and we can put a 0 on the other side of the decimal because we have no whole numbers. Therefore, our final answer is 0.6. For question 2, we are once again asked to convert this fraction to a decimal. So we've got minus 1/20, and once again, we need to turn the denominator into either 10, 100, or 1,000. So for this example, we can choose to turn our denominator into 100, and to do this, we would need to multiply 20 by 5, as 20 times 5 gives us 100. So we will therefore do the exact same on the top and multiply by 5. This then gives us minus 5 over 100. Alright, now since 100 has got 2 zeros, we know that we are going to have a final answer with 2 decimal places. Now when we are writing in this answer, we start writing from the right hand side. So we're going to have a 5 there. And since there are no other numbers, we'll have a 0 there. There are no whole numbers, and our overall answer was negative. So our final answer is negative 0.05. For question number 3, we are asked to subtract 5.86 from 8,27. So we start off on the right hand side and we say 7 minus 6 is 1. Then we look at the second place and we say 2 minus 8. Now obviously 2 is smaller than 8, so we're going to need to carry from the left hand side. This will change to a 7, carry the 10 across. We now have 12 minus 8, and that gives us 4. We can keep the decimal point there, and 7 minus 5 is 2. And that was nice and easy, and that is our final answer for question number 3. Just a quick little note, when you are adding or subtracting these decimals, remember that the decimal points need to line up with each other. And then you can carry on with the addition or subtraction. For question number 4, we are asked to add 212,75 to 4,256. Remember what I said in the previous example? When you are adding or subtracting these numbers which have decimal places, we need to make sure that these decimal points are in line with each other. Only then can we carry on. So we start on the right hand side and there is no number over there, so that is essentially a 0. So 6 plus 0 is 6. 5 plus 5 is 10. We carry the 1. 7 plus 2 is 9 plus 1. That gives us 10. We carry the 1. 2 plus 4 is 6. Plus 1 is 7. Now remember, we still have our decimal place over there. 1 plus, now there's essentially a 0 there. 1 plus 0 is 1, and 2 plus 0 is 2. Therefore, our final answer is 217.006. For question number 5, we are once again subtracting, and we subtract 7,2 from 11.4. And remember our golden rule, make sure that our decimal points are correctly lined up. So we can start on the left hand side, or rather the right hand side, and 4 minus 2 is 2. We keep the comma there, and we know that 11 minus 7 is going to give us 4. What you also could have done would have been to get rid of the 1 there and carry it across, but that is just the same thing. That is once again 11 minus 7, and you will still get 4. So our final answer is 4,2. For question number 6, we are asked to multiply 0,6 by 0,05. So to start off, 5 times 6 is 30, so we can keep the 0 there, carry the 3. 5 times 0 is 0, and we add the 3 to give us 3. Now, as we can see, if we multiply any of these other numbers together, we are just going to get a whole lot of zeros. So there's no point carrying on. We now need to figure out how many decimal places are going to be in our final answer. To figure this out, we need to figure out how many decimal places are in the first number that we're multiplying by and how many are in the second number that we're multiplying by. And then we add these two numbers together. So in our first number, we can see that we have got 1 decimal place. That number over there, number 6. In our second number, we have 2 decimal places, 0 and 5. So we've got 2. Now we add these up together and we get that this equals 3. So 1 from the first number, 2 from the second number, 3 decimal places in total. Alright, so we now have this answer at the bottom over here in red. So we start from the right hand side and we go 1, 2, 3. So our decimal place will be over there. Right, so our final answer will be 0,03. We don't need to worry about this 0 over here because there are essentially infinitely many zeros after this 3. So we only need to worry about the whole number. So our final answer for question number 6 is 0,03. For question number 7, we are asked to multiply 0.15 by 0.3 by 1.0. So we are going to do this piece by piece. So we are going to start off by saying 0.15 times 0.3. This will give us 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1, that gives us 4, and 3 times 0 is just 0. And once again, if we take the 0 in front of the 3 and we multiply it by everything, we are just going to get a whole lot of zeros. So now once again, we need to figure out how many decimal places are going to be in our final answer. So because we've got 2 for the first number and 1 for the second number, we add these two together and we get 3. Therefore, there are 3 decimal places in our final answer. So we can start on the right hand side and we go 1, 2, 3. Therefore, our answer for 0.15 times 0.3 is 0.045. Now remember, we still need to multiply by that last number, so we can then say times 1.0. Now when we multiply, this 0 is going to multiply by everything and just give us a whole lot of zeros. Then when we multiply the 1, we know that we need to start with a 0 there, and we then can carry on. So we have now completed all of the multiplication, and as we can see, when we add these two red lines together, the zeros are going to disappear and we are just going to be left with the bottom line. Lastly, we need to determine how many decimal places are going to be in our final answer. So for the top number, we had 3 decimal places, 1, 2, 3, and for our second number, we just had 1 decimal place. So we can add these two up together and we will get that the final answer needs to have 4 decimal places. So we start on the right hand side and we can go 1, 2, 3, 4. Therefore, our final answer is 0.045. Now there was actually a little bit of a trick to this one. If you had multiplied 0.15 by 0.3, remember we got 0.045 as our answer. We then multiplied that answer by 1, and as we should all know, anything multiplied by itself, or rather anything multiplied by 1 is itself. And that is why when we multiplied 0.045 by 1, we kept 0.045. And that is our final answer for question number 7. For question number 8, we are asked to divide 0.3504 by 0.06. Now, to make the division a lot simpler, what we need to do is we need to take this number here, which is also called the divisor, and we need to make sure that it has no decimal places. So if we were to take the number 0.06 and move this decimal place to over here, we would have a whole number. So essentially we need to move this decimal place 2 places to over there. To do that, we simply multiply by 100. So if we multiply 0.06 by 100, we get 6. For those of you who still aren't sure, you can use a calculator to check this. So if we multiply the divisor, which is this number over here, by 100, we need to multiply this number by 100 as well. And this is all to make our calculations a lot easier. So if we multiply this number by 100, the decimal place will move once and twice, and we will get 35,04. I have now rewritten our question with our divisor being a whole number. It is now a lot easier to divide 35,04 by 6. And we can now start with our dividing. Does 6 go into 3? No, it doesn't. So when you look at the next number, does 6 go into 35? Yes, it does. How many times? 5 times. 5 times 6 gives us 30. We say 35 minus 30, and that gives us 5. We drop the 0, and that gives us 50. Now, how many times does 6 go into 50? And that will be 8 times. Now remember, our decimal place is, or our decimal point rather, is over there, so we need to keep it over there. So once again, 6 goes into 50 8 times. 8 times 6 gives us 48. We minus the 2, and that gives us that 50 minus 48 is 2. We now need to drop the 4, and we get 24. 6 goes into 24 4 times. 4 times 6 is 24. And we can subtract these by each other, then that gives us 0. And we have no numbers left to bring down. Therefore, our final answer for question number 8 is 5,84. For question 9, we are asked to divide 8.76 by 4. So, 4 goes into 8 twice. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 minus 8 is 0. Bring down the 7. Now, 4 goes into 7 once, but remember, the decimal point will be over there because this is where it was in our dividend. We then carry on. 1 times 4 gives us 4. 7 minus 4 is 3. Carry the 6 down. 4 goes into 36 9 times, and 4 times 9 is 36. And as we know, 36 minus 36 will just give us 0. And we've got no numbers left to bring down. So therefore, our final answer for question number 9 is 2,19. Question 10 asks us to divide 7.5 by 0.03. But remember, we need this divisor to be a whole number. To get this to be a whole number, we need to multiply by 100. And if we multiply the divisor by 100, we need to multiply the dividend by 100 as well. So therefore, when we multiply 0.03 by 100, we will get 3. And when we multiply 7.5 by 100, we will get 750. We can now divide easily. 3 goes into 7 twice. 2 times 3 is 6. Subtract them, we get 1. Carry the 5. 3 goes into 15 5 times. 5 times 3 is 15. We subtract these, we get 0. Carry the 0 down. 3 goes into 0 0 times. 0 times 3 gives us 3. 0 minus 0 will just give us 0. And we are therefore done. So our final answer for question number 7 was 250. Now the trick to dividing decimals by each other is to always make sure that the number we are dividing by, called the divisor, must always be a whole number. There should never be decimals in the divisor.